It's a big deal. And it's going to cost you everything. The risk is great, but the reward is even greater. What happens when you look at your life, your faith, your marriage, your finances, and go all in?
Good morning, OSC. Put your hands together. It's a great morning. Welcome to not only you here, but those that are watching online. The series is all in. You're here for the very beginning, and we're so happy because I think it's so important for us to start where we're going to begin this series on the all in. Because I want to talk to you today, this is really, really important, the difference between hearing and listening to something. It was FDR, one of our great presidents, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who really had that problem. He says, I'm really not sure if people are listening to what I say. So many times when we would do one of our White House meals and invite all these dignitaries, I think it was just kind of the whole experience and the atmosphere, and then they weren't really listening to anything I said. So FDR decided to take and do something and try an experiment, and he said, every time he shakes hands, him and the First Lady shake hands in line, they were gonna say this to every ambassador and every congressman that walked by. So every person said, how are you, Mr. President? He said to every person, I killed my mother-in-law this morning. That's what he said to every person that walked by. So anybody that walked by, he says, how are you? I murdered my mother-in-law this morning. He said, all the responses he got, listen to the responses. He said that I murdered my mother-in-law this morning. The guest responded with phrases like, marvelous, keep up the good work. We're proud of you. God bless America. He said it kept happening until he got to the last person in line, which was the ambassador to Bolivia. And when all of a sudden, FDR looked at the ambassador, he said, I murdered my mother-in-law this morning. The ambassador of Bolivia said, Mr. President, I'm sure she had it coming. And all of a sudden moved on at that point. That really could show you the difference between hearing and listening, because we live in a society that there's so much noise happening that you have to turn down the volume in order to hear the good stuff. In fact, jot this down. This, what people say, they said the biggest obstacle to learning is really listening. The biggest obstacle to learning about people, learning in class, learning about a situation, is just listening to them or to what's taking place. Somebody turned me on to this one video, and it was a podcast it was of memory and memory retention. And he was talking about that I can help you with books that you read, remember and retain more. So I was watching this because it really interested me with the research that I do. So this memory expert named Jim Quick said, I want you to understand how important it is that people really don't listen. They just kind of observe, but they don't listen. So he says, let me do this experiment, and I'll do it with you guys. So he says, I need you to reset your mind right now. And he says, what I want you to do is I want you to take your fist. Do it with me. Take your fist. And he said, I need you to shake it out. Just shake it out. Get a chin. He says, then I want you to take it and put it on your chin. Go ahead. I said chin, not cheek. See, what you did was, you don't listen. What's wrong with this church? See, everybody's going like this. I said chin, but what we did was we didn't listen, we just watched. And that's the difference between between listening and hearing. We hear with our ears, we listen with our minds. Because we can hear a baby cry, but what listening does is really kind of tries to define why that baby is beginning to cry. And this many times was not just something that we have to learn, it's something that Jesus really made such an important an aspect, wanting people to listen and not just hear what was being said. In fact, there's one moment where Jesus in Mark chapter 4 uses the word listen 3 and 4 times to make sure that they got what he was trying to say. Here's what Jesus said. Look at Mark 4:23. He says to them, are you listening to this? Really listening? And then in verse 24, a third time, listen carefully to what I'm saying. And be wary of the shrewd advice that tells you how to get ahead in the world on your own. Giving, not getting is the way. Generosity begets generosity. Stinginess impoverishes. You see what Jesus just did? He said, I need you to listen to this, and then goes for 2 verses on giving and really deals with generosity. But probably one of those places, one of those landscapes that are full of black letters in the Bible that really all of a sudden drops this red letter verse, which really, if you have a Bible with red letters, it means those are the moments that Jesus speaks, is one of those rare moments that it drops red letters in a vast of black letters. It only happens a few times in the New Testament after the Gospels. Happens in the book of Corinthians. It happens as you continue on, it will take place in in the book of Acts. And then it happens just a few moments in the book of Revelation that the most important listen from Jesus is this one. Listen, hear the words. Revelation 3:20, listen, I'm standing at the door knocking, and if you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will eat together. It's the most important listen that I think Jesus can ever give, because what he was saying was, when he says eating together, it means that we become family. We get to do things as a family together. And here's the part that I want you to hear from us. Those that are watching, those that are sitting here week after week and listening week after week, if I can let you in on something that is so important to us as a staff and as a church family, I want to show you what our win is every week. Everything we do here on a Sunday leads us to one moment, the win of the service. The win is not the sermon, it's not the music, it's not anything else. The win comes down to the last 4 or 5 minutes when we have the opportunity to ask people to be born again. That's the win, because we want people to know God. And when we come down to those last 4 or 5 minutes, this is where people are listening to the knock on the door of their heart and have the opportunity to respond. I love that, because this is so important, because what I want them to know is that the voice you believe will determine the future you experience. The voice you believe at that moment will determine the future that you experience. And when somebody here begins to answer the knock on the door, let me tell you what it does. 3 quick things. This is what it does. 1, it gives meaning to your present. That's the first thing. It takes your past and brings forgiveness. And then for your future, it brings a security for your future. Let me mention those again, because this is so important. Your past is forgiven, your present has meaning, and your future becomes secure. That's what takes place when people respond. Do you know, at our last service, we got to the end and gave those people an opportunity to answer the knock on the door? Do you know almost 50 people gave their heart to Jesus for the very first time? Just in our last service, just the last service. Because you'll always see this as you're walking into this place. There's always a 4-step journey we want to take you on. And the first step is for people to know God. And that's what we do in our Sunday services. The second step, which I think is really important, is to find freedom. And we feel like where knowing God happens in the context of our Sunday services, to find freedom really happens in the context of small groups. And so 3 times a year, we begin to open up avenues for people to connect in relationships. It's so hard in a group this size. And so today, I want you, whether on your phone, your iPad, you can go to oscgroups.com and begin to sign up and see the directory of small groups. It just opened up today. And the summer is as half the semester, only 6 weeks. You get to join with all these different small groups that are forming right now, that you can begin to form relationships. And we believe that people find freedom. Then Sally talked about the third step, which was to begin to discover purpose. That's done through Growth Track. Right after this service today, you could just stay right in the sanctuary, and at 12:45, you could start with step 1. That's for those that just go, I want to just not be an attender, but I want to be someone who's going to make a difference, and we'll lead you right to our dream team. And that could start today. Right after the service, you'll leave your children in OSC Kids. We'll feed them, we'll feed you. And for 1 hour, 30 minutes of eating, 30 minutes of teaching, we'll dismiss you. And it goes in 4 weeks. You may say, well, I can't come for week 2 or week 3. That's okay. You can always catch up and get it at another time. This is so important. But it's that first step that I want to start with on the All In series. It's that first step that I think is key when we begin to give somebody an opportunity to make a decision for eternity and forever. And can I just pause for a moment? I want to say something that I think is so vital for us as a church, because the reason why I wanted us to know what the win is, because I want us to all believe for the win together. So can I say something to you that I think, I want to change kind of a signal for us. Because sometimes when I begin to go through, because this is what I'll say every single Sunday, I'll always use 3 letters and say, I want you to be born again, John chapter 3, and I want you to know how simple it is. And at that point, what happens some moments is people will think that that signal is for them to leave and to beat the traffic and to get out first. Can I help you with something? If we're all in together, then what the signal should be is when I ask people to bow their heads, should be let me get out. It should let me pray for the people on my road to be born again. Can we do that? Can we say that that's our signal? Can we just go, hey, if it's gonna take me an extra 10, 15 minutes, that's okay if I could see someone's life change forever. And at that moment, I want that to be your signal. Because if you're moving and leaving, and I know this it could sound a little strong, but I just want to say, if you're leaving, then people don't think it's that important. And I want us to know people are making decisions about eternity. And when we get to that point, we'll always say this. It is as simple. Do you remember the 3 letters that we say every single Sunday? It's as simple as A, B, C. And that's what we'll always say. And we'll always go A, admit, B, believe, C, confess. And that's the opportunity that we want to give for people to be born again. Sally told you that we went to the Dominican this last week and had an incredible time. One of the things that Cindy and I try to do as frequent as we can is to do missions trip together as a family. It's difficult based on schedules and finances, just because it's a big commitment as a family. But I'm telling you, it has been worth it. If you're here with family members, I am telling you, it is life-changing. 2 things that I was dialoguing with some of my children, and 2 things that that I'll hear constantly over. Even we talked about it a little bit this morning. I said, what was the most memorable things? And it always centers around these 2 things. They feel like what they learn the most is gratitude and generosity when they're on those mission trips. Gratitude, God has given us so much, and generosity, I don't need as much as I have. I can begin to touch other folks, and especially when we have a chance to meet our compassion children. And here's what's incredible. We were in some of the high poverty situations, walking in, Sally told you about it, and we saw lives change. And even in the midst of poverty, the joy was amazing to watch. It was an incredible trip for us. But I have to tell you, one of the hardest moments of the trip took place on Thursday night. I got permission from the family. I said, I would never say this unless you said I gave me permission. My phone rang at 11:30 and it was Pastor Randy. I know, Pastor Randy is never up that late. And if he was to call me, that is a really important thing, or it was on accident, or him and Polly are having problems. So what happened when him and Polly are not having problems? He's here on the front row, that's why I said that. But let me say, so 11:30 and I'm going, and I was fast asleep. And I'm going, okay, this is probably not good. And at 11:30 at night, we found out that one of the members on our team, their dad passed away of a massive heart attack. And it was devastating. This is the part of my job that you don't want. Sometimes people just kind of look here on a Sunday and going, that's what I want to do. You have no idea what goes on the rest of the week. And so for Cindy and I to wake this precious sister up at 11:30 at night and to tell her that her dad passed away was not the easiest thing to do. A man that was my age, and that it was totally unexpected. And to sit there, Cindy hugging her, to sit on the bed and to walk her through just what the next steps are, and to sit with her until she made every phone call to verify. She kept saying, no, it can't be true. I just talked with them. I just talked with them. And here's what's crazy. This is the part I want you to get. Last Sunday, he was sitting here. Last Sunday, he was sitting right over there on row 2. That's where he was sitting, right over there, part of it. And the joy is that not only was he sitting there, the man was a born-again Christian, which made it so much easier. But let me tell you something I say to Grant and Emily and our team very frequently before we come out. And I just say this, let's sing and preach, because we don't know whose service, this may be their last service ever attended here at this church. He didn't know that would be his last service. And can I just tell you something? Nobody here has any guarantee you'll be here next week. No, you can go, well, I'm a vegan. You have no guarantee. Well, I juice. You can juice and die. Can I just tell you that right now? While you're drinking your avocado kale drink, it could be all over this week. Because none of us have a guarantee. Nobody has a guarantee. But here's the part that is so important. Because when we come down to those last 7 minutes and we begin to go through and say, A, B, C, that's the moment that people are making a decision about eternity. Because nobody knows whose last service this is. Because some of us can't even say, well, I have 10 more opportunities, 20 more opportunities, 30 more opportunities. And that's why I feel like there's no better moment than the first message on All In to say, if I want to get us all in, I want us to be all in with God today. And instead of waiting for 7 minutes, I want to understand it right now the best that I can. If we say this every week, I want to make sure there is absolutely no confusion on the right directions to get to heaven. In fact, jot this down. It is impossible to drive in the wrong direction and arrive at the right destination. It's impossible to keep going down the wrong road and think, I'm gonna get to the right place. And today, we're gonna make sure, some of you may have to make some U-turns, but we're gonna get you to the right destination today. We want you to find Jesus today. We want you to know God today. So here's what we do every single week. We always end a service with always going, listen, to be born again is as simple as ABC. A, admit, B, believe, C, confess. And I wanna make sure that we understand those things. So take your pen, take your paper, whatever you wanna write with. Let's start and walk with me for the next few moments. Instead of waiting for the last 7 minutes, let's finish up by taking the bulk of our time with this. So A, the word, when we deal with A, we're dealing with admitting that I am a sinner. Admitting that I am a sinner. Now, this issue of sin is so important. It's Charles Finney, the 19th century evangelist, that said it like this: sin is the most expensive thing in the universe. If it is forgiven sin, it costs God his only son. If it is unforgiven sin, it costs the sinner his soul and eternity in hell. That's deep. Think of that for a moment. Sin is the most expensive thing in the universe. It either costs you your soul in hell, or it costs God his only son if it's forgiven or unforgiven sin. Now we have to recognize why this is so important. It's because what Romans 3:23 says, it says these words, for all have sinned. And so what that word means is all of us, everyone in this room, that's how clear it is. We are all sinners. And I want to make sure we understand what sin is. Let me tell you what sin is, because sometimes we just go like, it's saying bad words, it's doing this, it's hurting somebody. Let me be real clear with what sin is. You ready? Best definition I've heard. Sin is living life on my own terms with no regard for my Creator and Redeemer. Sin is living life on my own terms with no regard for my Creator or my Redeemer. It's basically saying we know better than God on how to live life. We're smarter than God. We got this. We know what we're doing. Basically, sin is this. If you're living in sin, is I get my own way and I get to do what I want. That's really what sin does. Now, where does that attitude come from? Because some folks think sin is an action and they forget it's part of our nature. David says, I was born in iniquity. I was born this way. There's something inside of me that's not right, and that's what the Bible calls a sin nature. In fact, Billy Graham said it best. If you want to know about the sin nature, he says you don't have to teach a child to be bad. You have to teach a child to be good. None of you are going like, now today's lesson is about cheating. I want to talk to you about cheating on a test or lying. I want to talk to you about, no, we don't have to teach them to be bad. It comes naturally. That's the broken part of us. That's the part, as you grow, that thing is in there from a child up that God needs to get at. Let me explain it to you this way. If you see a hole in an apple, listen to me close, what does that tell you? What do you think about if you see a hole? You think of absolutely. But here's the part I want you to know. If you see a hole in an apple, you can eat that apple. Because what we think is that some worm got on the apple and dug its way in. That's not what's happened. If you see a hole in an apple, that means the worm came out of the apple. What are you talking about, Pastor Tim? See, the eggs were already in there before the apple formed. Because what the insect does is it lays its eggs, the larva, on the apple blossom. And if there's no break in the apple, the worm can be in there because it grows in there, which means, you ready for this? Jot this down. It means that the apple grew up around its problem called the worm. See, when you're born, there is that thing inside of us, that worm inside of us called sin, that as we grow, it doesn't matter how shiny you are, it doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how buff you are, we all got worms, and it's called sin. Look at your neighbor and say, you got worms, ew. That's what it's saying. And here's the problem. If we don't do that, listen to me close. You know what we do? Then we start comparing apples with apples. We determine how good we are based on somebody else's apple life. See, if we don't look at our own life and go, man, I've got worms inside it, I've got a thing called a sin nature, then we start comparing ourselves to all the other apples around us. I'm not as bad as that apple. I'm brighter than that one. I look better than that apple. That apple's bruised. And then we start comparing ourselves with the wrong thing. It's like the child that came up to its dad and said, I'm 8 feet tall. He says, you're not 8 feet tall. She says, I am 8 feet tall. And he says, show me the ruler. And she, instead of looking at as feet as inches, she miscalculated, and she began to realize that her inches got messed up with the feet part on the ruler, which means if you use the wrong standard, you'll come up with the wrong conclusion. And if your standard is the messed up life of the person next to you, they've got worms too. So you have to understand, your standard is not this way, your standard is this way. And the only way we can measure up to that standard is to begin to call upon Him and say, God, I need you to fix me from the inside out. That's the way that happens. See, it was Augustine, our 4th century early church father, who said it like this: my sin was even more incurable because I didn't think myself to be a sinner. I'm incurable if I don't start with the aspect of going, I got worms. I'm a sinner inside. There's something that needs to be fixed. So Pastor Tim, where do we go from here? Well, that's what the good news is. A is admitting something's wrong on the inside and just grew around it. But B, it's the word believe. It's believe. Believe that Jesus paid the price for your sins instead of you having to take care of the sin bill yourself. That's what the B part is. See, the death of Jesus shows you and me how God views sin. His son would have to die for it, but it also shows us the high cost of being forgiven. See, the best way I can say it is, salvation is free for us, but it wasn't free for God. God had to pay a price for our forgiveness. Keep this in mind. Salvation is a free gift from God, but although it's free, not everyone possesses it. Let me say this one more time because this is important to get today. Even though salvation is a free gift from God, although it's free, it doesn't mean everyone has it. It would go something like this. What if we all of a sudden we leave church and we see advertisements on billboards, on the radio, and as we're leaving church, Home Depot says, hey, we're giving away free lawnmowers here at Home Depot. All you have to do is come down and we'll give you a free lawnmower. Well, here's the deal. It's free, but you don't possess it unless you go down there and get it. That means just because it's free doesn't mean you have possession of what is free for you. See, that's the same thing with salvation. This is so important. Listen to me. This is huge. Salvation is an invitation and it's not automatic. Salvation is an invitation and you have to RSVP for what Jesus is inviting you. You have to begin to respond to it. And you ready for this? This is the good news today. You RSVP by doing one simple thing, believing on Jesus Christ. That's the RSVP. It's that simple. This is what makes this amazing. The deal of all deals. This is where the death of Jesus becomes personal to you. See, if the death of Jesus If Jesus just died, that's history. But if Jesus died for me, that's the gospel and that's personal. Let me say that again. Jesus' death, history. Jesus' death for me, that's personal and that's the gospel. That's what makes this thing incredible. See, somebody asked the Apostle Paul the all-important question. He says, what do I have to do to be saved? Acts 16:30. Listen to these words. He led them out and asked Paul and Silas, sirs, what must I do to be saved? This is amazing. You ready for this, folks? They answered, believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved. Jesus said the same thing in the most famous verse that everyone knows, John 3:16, when he says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. Did you see what happened? He just said that the ticket in is believe. That's the RSVP. That's what changes everything. And here's what's crazy. You can't, if Jesus said believe and the Apostle Paul said believe, then you can't add anything else to it to get into eternity. This is incredible. Because you know what happens is many people try to scalp tickets into eternity by raising the stakes on it, and that's not what Jesus and the Apostle Paul said. Some people say, believe on Jesus and be baptized. That's not what Jesus said. Believe on Jesus and go to OSC. There was no OSC at that time. Believe on Jesus and go to your pastor or go to your priest. That's not what Jesus said. You have to be a Protestant and believe on. That's not what he said. You have to be Catholic and go. It's not what he said. You got to go in the water. You got to be confirmed. You got to have communion. Then you go to heaven. If you add anything to that ticket, you just scalped it and you just did something that Jesus never said. Jesus said the way you get there is believe. That's it. How good of news is that today? Because some of you are sitting here going, I've been trying to get good. I've been trying to get good. Stop scalping. It's believe on Jesus. That's what he says. I wish I can change it. And I know there's a bunch of religious people so nervous going, so you're telling me that they don't have to stop doing this and that. That's not what it says. Stop scalping. We'll arrest you. Listen, it's not in the ticket price. That's not what it says. But don't you have to do this? Jesus and Paul said believe. Let's not add anything else. We want to get you in the stadium and then we'll take care of all the other stuff. But you don't have to do all the good stuff to get there. Jesus already did the good stuff. He died for you and for me. Do you know what makes this amazing? Think of the craziest convert, the thief on the cross. D.L. Moody said it this way. The thief had nails through both his hands, so he couldn't work. Nails through each foot, so he couldn't run errands for the Lord. He couldn't lift a hand, lift a foot towards his salvation, yet Christ offered him the gift of God. He took it. Christ threw him a passport, and he took that passport and went all the way into paradise. That's a deal for us today. The thief, listen, if you're here today and going, you got to be water baptized. There was no thief that got water baptized. He wasn't going like, oh, wait a second. Okay, I wasn't at that point. It didn't happen because it's as simple as believe. And some of you some folks are going like, oh, I don't know about this. What about sin? What about this? Let's deal with C. A, we got worms. B, stop scalping tickets, believe. And C, confess. I confess Jesus is now, the Bible will use the word Lord. I'm going to use the word boss. Same word. You're boss now of my life. So lordship issue. Explain it, Pastor Tim. I love history, and there was a season I was really given to a certain genre of history. I love, probably about 3 to 5 years, I read everything I could get my hands on Abraham Lincoln, probably the greatest president that has ever served our country. There's nobody has been like him. And in Steve Brown's book, Scandalous Freedom, he tells an interesting story about Lincoln, that they feel like this was the motivation that way before his presidency that moved on him to fight against the scandalous crime of slavery in America and to fight to ratify the 13th Amendment and abolish slavery. And way before presidency, he was in the southern part of the United States and Steve Brown said, saw his first auction. He saw a precious girl being ripped away from her family. And Lincoln was horrified. This is where mission started in his heart. And he determined at that point that not only would he fight this, but he was gonna bid for that girl and set her free. And Lincoln stood there, and it didn't matter what the price was, he was gonna purchase that girl. And he won the auction, had that teenage girl and looked at her and just simply said this, "You're free." She looked at him and said, "Free, what does that mean?" The conversation went on. And Lincoln said, "It means you're free, completely free." The girl responded, "Does it mean that I can do whatever I want?" "Yes, free means you can do whatever you want." She looked at Lincoln and said, "Free to say whatever I want to say?" He said, "Yes, free to say whatever you want to say." And then finally she looked at him and says, "Does freedom mean that I can go wherever I want to go?" He says, "Freedom means you can go wherever you want to go." And the girl looked at him and says, "Then I shall go with you." That the person, lordship means that if you bought my freedom, I go with you then. That's what lordship is. You bought my freedom, then you're the person that I want to go with. It was shortly after joining the Navy that a new recruit asked his officer for a pass so he could go stand in his friend's wedding. The officer gave him a weekend pass, but informed the young man he'd have to be back by 7 p.m. Sunday. And the recruit looked at his commanding officer and said, "You don't understand, sir, I'm in the wedding." He says, "No, you don't understand, you're in the Navy." And can I just tell you something and make it really clear on confession that Jesus is the boss? Listen to me close. When you follow Jesus, it means he's not your employer on Sundays for an hour. It means he is Lord over every day of your life. That's what lordship means. This is not, when you become born again, it's not like, "Okay, God, I'll be good for an hour on Sundays and pet puppies." That's not what he's asking you to do. And I promise I won't beep anybody and I won't get angry when I drive to church. It may not last long, but I promise you, that's not what he's saying. He says, when you make me Lord, that means I'm the boss now. Remember what sin is. Sin is I get to do what I want to do. Lordship means, God, you're in charge. I trust you now. Romans 10:9, listen to it again. If you declare with your mouth, Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord. I didn't say this in any other service, but I'm going to say it now. Because that's a process. He says if you could say it with your mouth, he didn't say if you could live it out with your life, because he knows that's a process. Becoming a Christian, that's easy. Him being Lord, that's a process. He just said, I just need you to get it. I need you to say it, that you're Lord of my life. He says, and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's why, listen to me, folks. I really believe what an old saint said one time is true. Jesus is either Lord of all or he's not Lord at all. This is what you have to make a decision for. A, I got worms. B, no scalping tickets. It's simply believe. C, you're the boss now. See, it's basically this. A husband who is 85% faithful to his wife is really not faithful at all, is he? I'm all in, baby. 85%. I'm with you. Wait. Kick that man out, ladies. To be Lord is to say, God, you could put your finger on any area of my life. So while our religious part of us is going, if they want to be born again, they got to stop living with their boyfriend. They got to stop gambling. They got to stop cursing. That's not what it says. But it does say, when you make him Lord, he will go after the stuff. But you don't have to fix that to get into the park. But when you come into the park, trust me, he will fix it. Because he is the Lord. He becomes the boss. Pastor Tim, see, this is what it says. If you confess him as Lord, that word confess is so important. It's not just saying it, but the word actually means to say the same thing that God says. I say the same thing about sin. I say the same thing about tithing. I say the same thing about church. I say the same thing about living every day. I say the same thing that God says. I now say the same thing that God says even about my life. That's what makes it so important. Pastor Tim, that just seems like it's so hard. Okay, stay with me because I want to say this to you. One of the areas that I so many times fail with on Sunday is never reading the verse after the Romans 10, 9 and 10. Let me read you Romans 10, 9 and 10. This is what it says. If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord, the boss, believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, I love it, you will be saved. With the heart, a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth, he confesses, resulting in salvation. Now here it is. Here's the promise you receive when Jesus is in charge. You ready for this? It's verse 11. For the scripture says, whoever believes in him will never be disappointed. How awesome is that? He didn't say believe in me, believe in OSC, believe in a priest or a pastor. He says when you believe in him, you will never be disappointed. When he's in charge, I'm telling you, he is the most consistent. He always tells the truth. He will love you despite anything that you do. He says, you do that. He says, you'll never be disappointed. Why is this so important, Pastor Tim? Why is this so important? What's at stake here? Here it is. Eternity. Forever. Life beyond life. Heaven and hell, listen folks, are real places and people really go there. Heaven and hell are real places and people really go there. So let me age myself a little bit. If you go to Target now, there's this little box above the door, and when it senses motion, the doors open up and you get to go through. How many older folks like me remember that before they had motion, they had those rubber mats on the door that you stepped? How many remember the rubber mats that you used to step on, and as a kid, you're just going like this the whole time? I remember, I think it was Anna. I think it was just a little girl, and we're going. It could have been Target, anywhere. As we were going, ran ahead and jumped on the mat, and nothing happened. Assumed the store must be closed. Well, the door wasn't opening. She weighed like, I don't know, 20 pounds, whatever it was. Nothing was happening. It wasn't opening because she didn't have enough weight to open up the door. She needed somebody else to stand there. So when I stood on there, because of my weight, make no comments, okay? I just all of a sudden you're going like, woo, he's big. So when I stepped on there, all of a sudden the door opens up, which I'm here to tell you, that's exactly what happens in salvation. Some of you have been sitting here going like, I'm trying to get the door open. I'm trying to get it. I'm doing this. I'm doing better, God. I'm doing better. And you're sitting there trying to jump up and down. And God goes, you'll never be heavy enough to open that up. You got to get somebody else to step on the mat with you. And the only one that's heavy enough to open up that doors is Jesus himself. When he steps on that mat, welcome to heaven. Let me just tell you what happens. When he steps on the mat, let me tell you what takes place. Your past is forgiven. Your present has meaning. And your future is secure. That's what happens. That's why Jesus says these words. Listen to Matthew chapter 11. Listen to this. He says, are you tired? Are you worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Go away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Learn from the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly when you come to Jesus. I don't have to give you ABC. I already told you ABC. A, I got worms. B, no ticket scalping. C, he's the boss. Got it? Listen, A, I became a sinner the day I was born. I needed to get that fixed. And this church can't fix that. Jesus can. You need him to fix the sin issue. B, believing. I believe you died for me. That's why God sent you. God sent you to die in my place for my sin. And C, confessing you as Lord. When that happens, Jesus steps on that mat, those doors open up. Man, you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be honest to go, man, I thought just coming to church, I've been trying to be good. I just thought being an OSCer got me to heaven. We're not heavy enough. We can put all 3,000 people on that mat. We can't open that door for you. The heaviest person in the universe is Jesus himself. When he steps on it, that's when it happens. Bow your head with me, please. What's at stake here? Life beyond life. What's at stake here? Eternity. What's at stake here? Forever. Remember what we asked you to do when you bow your heads? Let's not look for keys. Let's not think about an exit strategy. Let's start to pray for people in our row. Let's pray. God, let them make a decision. This is an eternity decision, and it's as simple as ABC. Who goes to heaven? Not OSCers, not Protestants, not Catholics. It's those who are born again. That's what Jesus said. But I'm a Methodist, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Presbyterian. Those are great things, but that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, you must be born again. Okay, Pastor Tim, give me that one step, not 20 steps, one step. I'm gonna pray a prayer that just invites Jesus to come in. Jesus to step on the mat. Jesus to open up those doors for heaven for us. If you're here today and go, Pastor Tim, I'm taking that step. No one has an assurance that this is their last service. Nobody does. And I get it. One step, believe, no ticket scalping. Man, if Jesus wants me in my messed up stuff, I'm in. And I'm here to tell you, if you're here today and say, Pastor Tim, when you pray that born again prayer, I want in. I want my life changed today. I want him to come in and start from the inside out. How does that happen? I'm not gonna make you stand. I'm not gonna make you come forward. But I am gonna ask you this. If you're here today and say, Pastor Tim, when you pray that born again prayer, include me in that. I wanna be part because heaven is at stake. Hell is at stake. Forever, life beyond life. If you're here and say, Pastor Tim, include me in that prayer, I will ask you to do one thing. When I pray this prayer, you're saying, put me in that prayer without any hesitation. I want you to hold up your hand high. Hold it up as high as you can and say, and I'm gonna start from my left because I wanna see every hand that's up. Keep them up high. Let me start over here. Here we go. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Keep them up. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. You can put your hands down. 24, got you back there. You could put your hands down. 25, 26. Let me just ask you this. That's all we're gonna ask you to do. And then we're all gonna pray together. I'm not gonna ask you to do anything else but to take that one step. And if you're here today and say, I should have joined those 26 people, but I was a little nervous. I was a little afraid to raise my hand. That's all I'm gonna ask you to do. And then we're all gonna pray together. You won't be singled out. And if you're here, even if you're watching online, you can just go ahead, even online as you're watching it, and begin to start that process. If you're here and say, include me in that. I was a little nervous and I should have raised it. I wanna give you one more opportunity because eternity is too long. It's too long. And if you're here today and say, give me one more chance, I was just nervous. If you should have raised your hand, you didn't, hold it up now. Anybody else, hold it up now because I wanna make sure that I didn't miss anybody else. Got you over there, 27. Keep them up, 28. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. You could put your hands down. Can we all pray this together with these 33 folks? Say these words with me. Dear Lord Jesus, I believe you're the Son of God. I believe that on the cross, you took my sin, my shame, and my guilt, and you died for it. You faced hell for me, so I wouldn't have to go. You rose from the dead to give me a place in heaven, a purpose on earth, and a relationship with your Father. Today, Lord Jesus, I turn from my sin to be born again. God is my Father. Jesus is my Savior. The Holy Spirit is my helper. And heaven is my home. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. Come on, can we put our hands together?